I'm Chase Kantor, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to a special edition of the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you have a comment, criticism, or question, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. These podcasts are dedicated to exhibitors who would have participated at the Edmonton Expo 2020. Edmonton Expo is an annual convention that celebrates the fun of pop culture, including comic book artists, writers, and creators from Canada and the United States. On this episode, I chat with Chase Kantor. The podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. Chase is a writer, color artist living in Edmonton, Alberta. In addition to collecting Star Wars figures, Chase also collects degrees, a bachelor's in biology and classical literature, a diploma in writing for film and television, and a PhD in physiology. Chase wrote, colored, and lettered this series, The Saga of the Jack of Spades, now available through Renegade Arts Entertainment. Jack of Spades was nominated for the Best Graphic Novel 2019 by Sequential Magazine. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Chase Kantor. Chase Kantor, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Lovely to be here.
Cool. What I usually do to start off the interview is ask the creator about their first comic book. So I'm wondering if you remember, what was the first comic book that you read?
Well, I spend a lot of time just reading or looking at the pictures and not actually reading comic books. I don't know about the first one that I ever actually read. I'll tell you the one that had a lasting impact on me, because I was never really all that into comic books growing up. My older brother was a lot more interested, and he had a fair size collection, and every once in a while he would actually let me let his younger brother read one under close supervision, right? And the first one that had a lasting impact on me was Death of Superman.
Oh, wow. Okay. And
mainly because that was the first time that I saw, and obviously this has been done before, and gimmicks like this aren't unique to DC, but this was like the first time that I could see an actual superhero and grapple with issues of mortality. Mm-hmm. And that I think really spoke to me in a profound way, because you think of these superhero, these above supernatural beings that are supposedly impervious. You'd always think that well, obviously a character like Superman is going to come out on top. It's just a matter of time, and you kind of expect that. And this was the first time where it was like, oh, this is relentlessly showing the reader that this dude is going to die, and he's going to die in epic fashion. And I never really followed up with that. And I think when it came out, I was only maybe like 5 or 6 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
So that was really cool for me, and that probably had the biggest impact for in terms of like what I can recall reading early on. Yeah, that probably was the most impactful book that I had read up to that point. And I'm saying read loosely, but being a 6-year-old, there's only so much that I actually read from that book. But just even the imagery of that book was just brutal and relentless. And I remember I think it's like the first 10, 15 pages of that book just has like no dialogue, where it's Doomsday kind of appearing and just kind of like going through nature, and I think he snaps a deer's neck or something like that, and just being like a 6-year-old going, oh, that's pretty brutal. I can't imagine what's in store for Superman. But yeah, no, that was probably and looking back on it, I think that had probably a pretty big, profound impact on how I write and how I view characters, and kind of like the relentless struggles that I put them in.
Sure. So that leads me to my next question. I mean, that's definitely had an impact on you, but I'm wondering who or what inspires you to create your art today?
That's a tricky question, because I never really consider myself as a comic book artist. Like I color some things and I'm kind of learning at it, but I always kind of shy away from that, because there's people that actually have earned that moniker, who are like legit artist that can look at a blank sheet of paper and not be intimidated to not actually do anything to it. I'm more than happy with like coloring within the lines of something that's put in front of me. But yeah,
well, in the broader sense of the term, let's say creator, rather than artist, but creating your comic books today and your art in broad terms, let's say, who inspires you? Are you reading anyone? Is there any type of literature that inspires you?
I really like stories that kind of subvert expectations. So a little bit about my background. Kind of how I got into comics. I was actually studying to be I was studying film and TV writing, and that was kind of my pursuit for a long time. And there was a comic book course that was offered at the program at the school that I was taking, and I took that, and that kind of opened the door for different ways of telling stories. But at that time, it was. A lot of it was, like Chris Nolan movies. It was honestly, a lot of it was just like these ridiculous action movies from, the 80s and early 90s. My family kind of speaks in movie dialogue, and growing up, film was like a huge part of how we kind of communicated with each other. So a lot of what I write is kind of like this hodgepodge of references to all these movies that I grew up watching that just kind of informed my own personality. So it's a lot of referential things to like The Princess Bride and Zorro, and a lot of Die Hard in there. I find myself like sometimes writing whole scenes, and then by the time I'm done writing it, I'm like, oh, this was in The Godfather. What the hell am I doing?
Well, you can't go wrong with The Godfather, I tell you.
Yeah, true. It's been done a few times though. So.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's good. So, talking to you and others under the context of the Edmonton Expo that unfortunately didn't happen this year. So I'm wondering, what were you planning to exhibit at that show?
So we last year, I think we just missed the launch of our graphic novel. So we had been putting out single issues of my series, the Saga of the Jack of Spades. We were putting that out probably at like one issue a year, something like that. We were kind of couldn't get it really all that more frequent than that. But then we ended up getting picked up by Renegade Arts, and we decided to collect everything as a trade paperback, and that was the first 5 issues of that series. And I don't think we made it last year in time for that trade to be released. So we were planning on having kind of that debut, as well as the first issue of the spin-off series Alice of Spades, which was kind of we were going to tell like a concurrent story that set in the same world, but told through Jack's younger sister Alice's her perspective, and kind of see how events play out through her eyes. We wanted to have the first issue of that kind of done for this year's Edmonton Expo, but what happened with everyone, COVID happened, and then everything just got pushed back. Artists that we had on board before couldn't commit to the schedule. Everything was up in the air. Some funding fell through as well. So everything's kind of back at square one, but we're still kind of, making slow progress trying to get that series out. But we're kind of hoping that, next year, when, knock on wood, hopefully when it's open for next year, we'd like to have the trade out for Alice of Spades.
Sounds good. I apologize. I should have congratulate you right off the bat, because the Saga of the Jack of Spades was nominated for Sequential Magazine for Best Graphic Novel. So that's great news.
Thank you. Yeah, we were really excited about that.
Sure.
That was really cool. That kind of took us by surprise. Yeah, it was definitely a surprise kind of waking up to that, and to be included with all the other nominees was really cool. We're just really excited to keep on telling the story, and it's something that people seem to really enjoy reading. So we're going to keep making it for as long as people enjoy reading it.
Sure. For those not familiar with the story, how would you describe the Jack of Spades series?
It's kind of like a I always tell people it's a swashbuckling fantasy adventure series, kind of like if you took, the premise of Game of Thrones, a bunch of families running around trying to chop each other's heads off. But if you took that premise but set it in the Princess Bride universe, so it's at its core, it's this fun, swashbuckling adventure romp centered around our main character Jack, who is the next in line to inherit the Spade throne. But we set him down a path where he kind of has to make a decision about the course of his life. This is all kind of playing with the playing card mythology. So
right.
4 rival families. You have the hearts, the clubs, the diamonds, and the spades. And we're taking hundreds and hundreds of years of playing card mythology and trying to distill like a cohesive narrative out of it, basically.
Before we started recording, you mentioned that you've been to Edmonton Expo in the past. So I'm wondering, do you have any favorite moments that you can share with us?
I have a favorite moment that occurs every time that I'm there. And it's whenever I'm at my table and, I'm mostly, chatting with, friends that I see every single time that I'm there. And someone I see kind of in the corner of my eye takes, a look at the table, continues walking, is chatting with their friends. I'm still chatting with my friends. And then you kind of see them take a second glance out of the corner of their eye, and then they stop. And then they literally do like a little backwards shuffle all the way over to your table. And they're like, you need to tell me what this is about. And honestly, that like exact interaction happens at least once a year. At almost every single con that I attend, and that's probably my favorite moment.
Cool, good. I want to switch gears slightly and talk about your creative process. I wonder if you could walk me through how you go from the initial concept to the finished page.
Oh, I have no idea. It's a miracle that anything gets written and anything makes sense. I'm one of those writers that like hates writing. I absolutely hate it. It's a chore. It's laborious. I can't stand it. I constantly delete what I just wrote. So it's really a miracle that anything gets actually filled in on a page. But I love having written. I like looking back and looking at a body of work and being able to appreciate it and kind of revisiting old things that I wrote and think, oh, well, that was actually clever. The actual process is just trying to find a time where I'm not as self-loathing as I usually am, where I think, oh, okay, well, this is actually kind of cool. And let's continue on with this and let's explore this moment in this character's life. A lot of it, what I've been doing recently is trying to find a more standardized system of writing. Because for a long time, I kind of just tried to write when I was, inspired to write. But that's not really an efficient way of writing, I've found out. So what I try to do is grab a couple hours a day and set that aside. Like, okay, between 9 and 12, or between if I get home, it's between 7 and 9 o'clock. It's like, okay, I'm gonna sit down. There's gonna be a keyboard here. I'll have a glass of water. And let's just write until something sounds cool, and then delete everything else except for the thing that sounds cool, and then try to build off of that. The other thing I've been trying to do is listen to a lot of like random Spotify playlists and see if that kind of inspires me as well. That's been kind of my process for Alice's Spades. I tried to do something different with that book as well, where like I'm from like the writing for film and TV background, where it's all about structure first and then character and story kind of comes second to that, and you can build that around hero's journey. You can build that around 3-act structure, but that's those are your blueprints, right? That's your skeleton, and everything else is built around that, which is kind of how I tried to do Jack of Spades as well, but I kind of kicked it up a notch for Alice of Spades, where I actually had, okay, well, let's start with the fundamentals. Let's, start with what drives this character. Who is this character? What do they want out of life? And what is the exact opposite of where they want to be, right? So I try to write in those, kind of abstract principles. Where is this character now? Where do they want to be? And where we actually end up is, a full 180 from what that expectation is, right? So it's mostly about subverting expectations, but generally I try and fit that particular framework. And then I tried to do like a beat sheet around that and actually drew out, a story arc this time and plotted it out. And honestly, it worked so much better. I can't believe I wasn't writing like this in the past. And
sure,
it may have just been like a maturity thing where I just needed to devote the time to, the actual fundamentals of it instead of just trying to go in blind and hope for the best, which is kind of how I approached Jack of Spades, where it was, I had a loose idea of what I wanted to do, but a lot of it was just wishful thinking. And honestly, a huge portion of it was Dan Schneider's art, which really impacted how I viewed that story after I even wrote it. It was meant to be much darker and much grittier. It wasn't even supposed to be young adult. It was, it was violent. It was incredibly dark, and in terms of where we end off with that character. And there's still elements of that, but with his art style, it informed so much of the story that it wouldn't have worked in its original form. So I imagine when we actually get an artist for Alice of Spades that I might have to do a little bit of rethinking with that. But I imagine that's for a lot of writer and artist teams where a lot of it is kind of, the writing and the art kind of informs each other in this kind of cyclical, weird way. I haven't, really worked with a whole lot of artists, to be honest. So I'm really excited to go forward with the Alice of Spades and kind of, find some new Canadian artists and work with them and kind of see how our styles mesh.
Cool. Something to look forward to, that's for sure. Now you mentioned Alice of Spades, but I'm wondering, do you have any other projects in the works that you can talk about?
There is a book that I really want to write called I Am Many Cats. It's kind of this book that I like every single con that I go to. Once I get a chance to talk with my friends, it's like, well, why aren't you writing I Am Many Cats yet? It's essentially about a young girl whose family has just been kind of moved to a new city. So she's got no, kind of support system. She's got no friends, kind of has to restart her life just being like a little, 12-year-old girl. But there's like a freak accident at a kitty litter factory, and she like falls into a batch of kitty litter. And then when she gets up, she discovers that she can actually control cats with her mind, and she can shoot like laser pointers out of her eye, and not laser beams, nothing useful, right. Just laser pointers. The whole idea is that she can mech Zord with a bunch of stray cats, and they kind of grab onto her body like almost like Power Rangers, Megazords, where they kind of form over top of her. Really, I just have like a title and a loose premise at this point, and really just like a cover of the comic. I haven't written the bloody thing yet. I'm really excited to write it. It's definitely in a genre that I haven't really had a whole lot of experience in, but that's probably next in line once I get this whole Alice of Spades thing going. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds intriguing, that's for sure. Where can people find out about this Cats project and your other work online?
This is probably the first time I actually mentioned in public I Am Many Cats. There's really not a whole lot there that people can see, but hopefully, one day they'll be able to, to see some art for that project. Alice of Spades is going to be coming out probably, I don't know, next year. Let's hope 2022. Who knows, right? Mm-hmm. If they want to look for the Saga of the Jack of Spades, you can always go to our website, thesagaofthejackofspades.com. You can go over to our publisher's website, Renegade Arts. You can also just go to your local comic book shop or local bookstore, because we're pretty much everywhere at this point, I think.
Thanks to Chase for the chat. You can discover more about Chase on Twitter at Dr. Run and Dash. That's DrRunandDash. And online at chasemkantor.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And if you can, leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at TrueNorthComics. please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2020.